The day I graduated summa cum laude, they bought my brother a Tesla and told me to take the bus. No joke. My cap and gown were still in the dry cleaning plastic when my stepdad, Gary, looked up from his phone just long enough to say, "Chase has a dealership appointment that morning. You can grab the bus, right? Runs straight to campus." I'm Rachel. I'm 25. I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. My mom died when I was 12. After that, it was just me, my stepdad, and his golden boy, Chase. He's 2 years younger, always the smooth talker, the one with the crooked grin who could crash a car and still get rewarded with a new one the next day. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one. Got straight A's, took up coding when other girls were doing ballet. I didn't mind. I liked solving problems. But I guess that never looked impressive enough in our house. Gary was always polite to me, cordial even. But warmth, pride, I didn't get that. Chase would talk about flipping houses or grinding in real estate, and Gary would light up like a Christmas tree. I once told him I got a paid internship at a health tech startup, and he just asked if I'd still be able to pick up Chase from hockey practice. I don't say this for sympathy. I say it because I know what it's like to scream quietly, through achievement, through effort, and still not be seen. So when I handed Gary and Chase the invitation to my graduation, something I'd worked toward for 6 years while juggling 3 part-time jobs and a full-time course load, I hoped, stupidly maybe, that they'd show up. Not for the ceremony even. Just for me. Just once. Gary didn't even glance at the invite. "Tesla pickups at 10:30. Maybe Uber?" Then he turned to Chase and said, "You're gonna look like a boss pulling up to closings in that thing." I stood there, frozen, holding the card. Chase smirked and said, "You could probably get a ride from someone, right? Or hey, just take the nerd bus. Kind of fitting." I didn't respond. I just walked upstairs, slow and steady, like if I moved too fast, the tears would spill over. I sat on my bed with the envelope still in my hand. I had no boyfriend, no guests, no flowers. Just me and a $4.50 bus pass. That night, I saw Gary polishing the car like it was a trophy. Chase was live streaming the delivery countdown on Instagram. I watched from the hallway. I'd seen enough. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that I'd been working on a neural mapping program during my last 2 years in school. Something big. Something that might change how early-stage Parkinson's was diagnosed. I hadn't told anyone because, honestly, no one ever asked. They were too busy watching Chase unbox shoes or talk about crypto like he discovered it himself. I stayed quiet because I didn't need applause. I needed space. But that night, I decided something quietly inside me. They weren't going to get another inch of me. No more trying to make them proud. No more hoping they'd wake up and see me. I'd build my own damn world, and I'd do it loud enough that one day they'd have no choice but to hear it. Graduation morning, I woke up early. I put on my robe, pinned my hair, and took the 6:40 a.m. Route 63 heading toward the university. I sat by the window while a man next to me coughed into a paper towel, and a kid across the aisle played Angry Birds on mute. Meanwhile, Chase was probably sipping espresso in a showroom while they programmed his seats to remember his posture. When I got to campus, no one was waiting for me. Everyone else had family taking photos, holding signs, crying happy tears. I just found my seat, smiled at the stranger beside me, and kept breathing. And then, something happened. The dean got up to speak. He cleared his throat and started reading from a list of notable student achievements. It was meant to be general, just a nod. But then he said it. He mentioned a student who had co-developed a predictive algorithm currently under review by the Mayo Clinic. He didn't say my name, but I knew. I had submitted the abstract through a blind peer review process. He said it had the potential to revolutionize diagnostic pathways, that it was developed by one of our own. The girl next to me clapped politely, not knowing the person was sitting right beside her. But I knew. For the first time in years, I felt something shift. Not pride, not joy. Something quieter. Like a door finally unlocking from the inside. And then my phone buzzed. It was Chase. A picture of him in front of his new Tesla with the caption, "Success looks good, doesn't it?" I stared at that photo for a full minute. Then I put my phone away and smiled. Not because I was hurt, but because I finally realized I wasn't chasing their definition of success anymore. What I did next? Well, let's just say the story wasn't over. And the Tesla? That wouldn't age well. When I got home that night, still wearing the gown that no one saw me walk in, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat on the edge of my twin mattress in the corner of my apartment, the one I paid for by tutoring calculus until midnight, and stared at the empty envelope from the university. The diploma was still inside. I didn't have the energy to pull it out. I kept thinking about that photo Chase had sent me. Him in front of the Tesla, smirking like he'd won something. Caption, "Success looks good, doesn't it?" That line stuck with me. Not because it hurt, but because it was so clear he actually believed it. He really thought that car, that smile, that hollow image was success. I opened Instagram, not because I wanted to see it again, but because I had to know how far they took it. And there it was. A video posted by my stepdad, Gary. Him and Chase in the Tesla showroom laughing with the salesman. "Proud dad moment," the caption read, "helping my son start his next chapter." Comments were full of flame emojis and "Chase is killing it." Meanwhile, my graduation photo, just me, taken by a kind stranger outside the auditorium, had 6 likes and no comments. Not even a text from Gary. And that's when the weight of it all finally hit me. It wasn't just today. It was years of being second, years of being the backup plan, the one they called when Chase forgot something or needed a ride, but never the one they showed up for. I thought back to senior year of high school when I won a regional math award and they left during the ceremony because Chase had a dentist appointment. Or when I got accepted to a summer coding camp and Gary told me he couldn't justify the cost, but turned around and bought Chase front row NBA tickets that same week. I kept making excuses for them, kept telling myself maybe next time they'd show up. Maybe if I got just one more A, one more scholarship, one more award, maybe then I'd matter. But that night, sitting in that quiet apartment, I realized I'd been trying to prove my worth to people who never wanted to see it. And I was done. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. I made coffee, sat with my laptop, and opened up the code I'd written in my spare time. It was messy, scattered, just like me. But it was real. It was mine. The neural mapping tool I'd been building had potential. Real potential. I'd already had one mentor review it and tell me if I could clean it up, package it, and pitch it right, it could change the game in early disease detection. That was the first time anyone in the tech world had told me I was onto something. So that's what I did. For the next 4 months, I worked day and night. Weekends, holidays, birthdays. I stopped checking in with Gary and Chase. I blocked their numbers after Chase texted me a link to his YouTube vlog titled, "My Tesla Journey, Hustle Pays Off." I didn't reply. I just built. I pitched my prototype at a regional startup demo day. I didn't expect much. I was the only solo founder there, the only woman, and definitely the only person without a VC contact in my back pocket. But when I finished my demo and opened it up for questions, one of the judges, an executive at a healthcare accelerator, asked if I had time to meet the next day. 2 weeks later, I signed a development deal. Nothing crazy. No headlines. But enough to fund a small team, polish the product, and, most importantly, put my name on something real. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. It wasn't about revenge, not then. It was about survival. About building a world where I didn't have to beg to be seen. Then, last week, something happened. Chase showed up at my apartment. I hadn't given him the address. He must have gotten it from some mail I forgot to redirect. I opened the door and there he was, holding his phone, filming himself, with the Tesla parked illegally out front. He said he wanted to do a collab, said people would love to see a humble family moment where the hustler bro reconnects with his brainiac sister. I stood there, frozen. And then he said it. You can talk about your little app or whatever. I'll drive us to the shoot in the Tesla, maybe do a side angle of you getting out like a boss. That's when I realized he still didn't know. He didn't know I wasn't just coding an app. He didn't know my project had just been fast-tracked by a major hospital network. He didn't know that I'd signed a private contract making me the sole IP holder on a diagnostic system now valued at over $45 million. He didn't know a damn thing. And that's when I smiled. Not because I was flattered, because I finally saw the perfect way to show him exactly who I'd become, and just how far behind he really was. But I didn't say yes. Not yet. What I did say, well, that's where this story turns. I didn't talk to my dad for 3 months after the graduation. Not a word. He didn't call, and I didn't reach out either. It's like he assumed I'd come crawling back eventually. Like always. Like I'd forget the way he looked right through me that morning when I stood there in my cap and gown and asked if they were coming. His exact words, "Your brother needs me that day. He's about to close on his first property." That's a real milestone, Olivia. Apparently, 4 years of busting my ass at Stanford on a full scholarship, working nights to pay for rent, and pulling a perfect GPA wasn't a milestone. Not in his world. But here's the part that still sticks in my throat. It wasn't just the day of. It was everything leading up to it. Every skipped phone call. Every time he told me to be more like Ethan. My little brother who failed out of college twice and somehow ended up with a Tesla and a company credit card. It wasn't even his company. It was Dad's. I kept thinking maybe it was me. Maybe I was too quiet, too independent, too unflashy. I wasn't asking for praise. I just wanted to be seen, to be chosen just once. But the silence after graduation, that was louder than anything he ever said. The weird thing was, the more distance I put between us, the clearer things got. I stopped checking his social media, stopped watching Ethan's stories. I started walking home from the office instead of taking the train. It gave me time to breathe, to think. I'd landed a role as a research lead at a biomedical AI firm in San Francisco. Small team, big vision. It wasn't sexy. It didn't come with champagne launches or LinkedIn flex posts. But we were doing work that could change lives. And I was building the predictive engine from the ground up. One night, I stayed late at the lab. It was around midnight when the building went quiet. Just the hum of the servers and the soft buzz of the fluorescents overhead. I looked up from my screen and saw my own reflection in the glass. Tired, older than I remembered, but calm. No one was clapping for me. But for the first time, I didn't care. Then my phone buzzed. It was a group text. One I didn't realize I was still in. Dad. Celebrating Ethan's partnership offer tomorrow. Backyard BBQ at 3. Everyone brings something. Olivia, potato salad? I stared at the screen like it was a joke. Potato salad? I hadn't spoken to him in months. He had no clue what I was working on. No idea I'd just submitted a patent application for a diagnostic tool that could flag neural degradation patterns years before symptoms ever showed. He didn't ask. He never asked. I didn't reply. I didn't go. 2 days later, I got a voicemail from my aunt, his sister. She was crying. Turns out Dad had given a proud father speech during the party. Toasted Ethan for being the visionary of the family. Said he wished Olivia could have been there to learn something about commitment. Commitment. I saved the voicemail, not to hold a grudge, but because that word hit something in me that never healed right. I gave them all the space they wanted. And then, last week, I got an email from a reporter. Said she was writing a piece on under 30 innovators in healthcare tech. She wanted to feature me. I told her I wasn't interested in publicity. But then she said something that stopped me cold. She'd been referred to me by Ethan, my brother. The same one who once joked that I should just marry rich and chill. Apparently, he'd stumbled on a published abstract from our project, saw my name, and suddenly decided we should collaborate on something. I called him just to see if it was real. He answered with that same fake-friendly tone he used on investors. Told me he had a cool idea for an app. Said we should build it together. Play the whole brainy sister hustler brother angle. And then he said this: "You do all the nerd stuff. I'll make sure people actually notice it." That's when everything went quiet in my head. Like some final piece of me just gave out. I didn't hang up. I didn't yell. I just said, "Sure, Ethan, let's talk." Because in that moment, I realized something dangerous. He didn't know. He didn't know that the company backing our research had just closed a $90 million Series B. He didn't know that I now held controlling interest in one of the fastest growing AI firms in the state. He didn't know that in 2 weeks, I'd be speaking on a private panel in DC with the Surgeon General. He didn't know he'd just handed me the perfect opportunity to do what I'd never done before. Let them see exactly who I've become. And let them watch it all unfold from the sidelines. I hadn't stepped foot in my father's house since the graduation barbecue. Not after he toasted my brother for becoming a visionary and asked me to bring potato salad like I was the damn caterer. That night burned a hole in me that still hasn't fully closed. But a week ago, I got a message from my cousin Mara, the only one in the family who ever really saw me. "You should come to the dinner this Friday. He's inviting investors. Ethan's pitching something innovative. Thought you'd want to know." I stared at her text for a long time. Ethan pitching something innovative was a joke. The man barely understood how his own email worked. He once asked me what the cloud was and if it had anything to do with weather patterns. Still, I felt it in my chest. This slow-burning pull to show up. Not out of revenge, not exactly. But because for the first time, I didn't feel like the outsider in my own story. I had my own team now. My own lab, my own investors. Hell, I'd just closed a 6-figure licensing deal for my predictive health algorithm. And no one in that house had the faintest clue. So I went. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I just showed up in a simple navy dress, hair back in a bun, no makeup. I wanted to be invisible until I chose otherwise. The house looked the same. Pristine on the outside, hollow on the inside. Fake marble floors, oversized art prints. You know the kind of place where everything screams success but nothing feels like home? I walked in and was hit with the smell of overcooked steak and cologne. Laughter floated from the backyard, where Ethan was holding court with a group of older men in tailored suits. I watched from the kitchen window as he gestured at a whiteboard. Yes, a literal whiteboard. Like he was Steve Jobs in flip-flops. I moved quietly through the house, catching snippets of conversation. My dad bragging about Ethan's breakthrough concept and how their family was about to make waves in the AI space. That's when I saw it. On the kitchen counter, propped up like a trophy, was a pitch deck. Printed, with my code in it. Not inspired by, not referenced, not adapted, stolen, verbatim lines of code, screenshots from my internal demo, even my prototype diagrams, ones I had only ever shown to a closed research group and protected under NDA. I felt something crack inside me. Not the kind of break that sends you spiraling. The kind that makes you suddenly, terrifyingly calm. I picked up the deck and started flipping through it. There it was again. My algorithm, dressed up with Ethan's name at the bottom. No credit, no footnotes, nothing. And in that moment, I realized what had happened. That reporter who'd reached out last month asking about my work wasn't real. I'd ignored the red flags. She had asked for technical breakdowns, diagrams, access to my prototype, all under the pretense of writing a startup profile for a new health tech column. I sent her just enough to vet her. And that was the exact material now sitting on my father's kitchen island. I don't remember walking outside. I just remember standing at the edge of that damn barbecue, watching Ethan draw squares and arrows on a whiteboard while men in suits nodded like they understood a thing he was saying. And then he saw me. He froze. Just for a second. His mouth curled up into that same smirk he wore in the Tesla video. "You made it," he said, like he was doing me a favor. "Want to see how we're about to change the game?" I didn't blink. "You stole my code." The laughter died instantly. A few of the suits looked confused. My dad stepped in, hand on Ethan's shoulder like he was steadying him. "Olivia, don't make this dramatic," Dad said. "We're all family here." "No," I said, calm as ever. "You're not my family. You're just people I used to love before you taught me what betrayal actually looks like." And then I pulled out my phone. I tapped once. The screen behind Ethan flickered, and my voice played through the Bluetooth speaker he'd forgotten was still paired. A recording. His own voice from a Zoom call with someone he thought was an investor. Bragging, saying how he borrowed a little genius from the family nerd and no one would ever know. Silence. Dead, awful silence. And that's when the investor from the university's bioethics board, who I had invited to the dinner, stood up from the back of the yard and said loud and clear, "This deal's off, and you're about to have one hell of a legal problem." Ethan's face turned white. My dad didn't look at me. And I finally didn't care. After that night, the one where I exposed Ethan's theft in front of the investors, things didn't unravel right away. That's the thing no one tells you. Justice doesn't fall like thunder. It creeps in, quiet and patient, and when it hits clean. The next morning, I woke up to 12 missed calls and 2 voicemails from my dad. The first one was tight and controlled. He said I'd embarrassed the family and ruined a legitimate business opportunity. The second one was different. His voice cracked. He asked if we could talk, just the two of us. I didn't respond to either. Ethan, on the other hand, went silent. Total blackout. I figured he was hiding behind whatever lawyer Dad had rushed to hire. What they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was that I'd already secured copyright protections and a full paper trail through my company's legal team long before I walked into that backyard. They thought I was just some girl who wrote code in her bedroom. They didn't realize I'd built something worth protecting and learned exactly how to protect it. 2 weeks later, I was contacted by a journalist from a tech ethics blog. She said someone from the panel had tipped her off. I told her everything. I showed the emails, the pitch deck, even the clip of Ethan bragging about borrowing a little genius. The story ran quietly, tucked behind bigger headlines, but it got traction in the right circles. The investors who had almost signed with Dad and Ethan? They backed out completely. One of them forwarded me the final message they sent. "If this is how you treat your own blood, we're not interested in how you treat your partners." That line hit harder than I expected. Meanwhile, the university where I'd done my initial research launched their own internal investigation. Turns out, Ethan had submitted a grant proposal using one of my old abstracts, without naming me. That was a serious problem for them. Academic dishonesty tied to donor money? Yeah, they didn't take it lightly. By month's end, Ethan had lost his job. The startup he was trying to build folded before it even launched. My dad tried to spin it, of course. Told people Ethan stepped back to refocus on himself. But word gets around, and in that small pocket of tech networking where everyone knows someone, their names weren't welcome anymore. I didn't throw a party. I didn't gloat. I just let it be. The most satisfying part wasn't watching them fall. It was watching them realize I never needed to push. A few weeks after the dust settled, I drove back to my old neighborhood. Not to see the house. I didn't care about that anymore. But to visit the small community center I'd quietly helped fund, the one where we teach young girls coding basics and STEM thinking. One of the girls, 9 years old, gap-toothed and bright as hell, ran up to me and said, "I told my brother I was smarter than him and that I'm gonna make robots." I laughed so hard I almost cried. That night, I sat in my apartment, finally quiet, and I let myself feel it all. The anger, the grief, the years of trying to be chosen by people who couldn't see past their own reflection. And finally, the peace. Because I didn't win by getting even. I won by building something so real, so solid it couldn't be taken from me, even when they tried. What I've learned is this. Not every wound leaves a scar you can show. Some stay hidden, quiet, shaping the way you walk through the world, But just because they're invisible doesn't mean they aren't powerful. And sometimes, healing looks a lot like walking away without turning around. If any of this hit home for you, or if you've ever felt like the invisible one at your own family's table, drop a comment. I'd love to hear your story. And if you want more real stories like this, ones that don't sugarcoat the ugly parts but still find the strength in them, you know where to find me. Thanks for sticking around. I'm glad you're here.